The Samahang Basketbol ng Pilipinas condemned the acts of on-court violence in an NCAA match where Jose Rizal University heavy bomber John Amores punched four College of St. Benilde Blazers players. Amores was suspended indefinitely by the league and the Jose Rizal University. SBP and NCAA officials talked about the need to review security protocols. We discussed the legal aspect of the brawl with sports lawyer, Attorney Mickey Ingles. Thank you so much for joining us, Attorney. Amores has been handed an indefinite suspension by the NCAA and by the Jose Rizal University school and will no longer see action for the remainder of the campaign. Are these sufficient disciplinary actions, you think?
I think they're sufficient because I think they're still trying to temper the sanctions with a bit of mercy. I think that's one of what they said in the statement. Although I would have wanted more concrete goalposts for Amores to do in order for him to get back on the court. Indefinite suspension, we saw this with Kyrie Irving and the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets. But with them, they gave certain conditions for him to go back to court. We don't see this with the penalties given by the NCAA or by the school itself. Hopefully, they come up with something more concrete in the future for him to do, at least so that he learns from his actions and that he shows actual remorse, because I don't think he's apologized yet.
Yes, he hasn't apologized yet. In his Facebook posting, he said, let's forget about it and I will treat you to a snack. What about Jose Rizal University? The educational institution, does it have any liability? Because Amores is their player.
I was thinking about that, but if you look at the civil code and the jurisprudence when it comes to the liabilities of schools, it's normally the liability of the teacher of a student when something happens or something is done by the student. So it's not really the liability of school, but of the teacher. But in this instance, there's no teacher involved. The closest you can get is the coach. And I don't think the coach can be held liable for what Amores did because it was completely out of the blue.
Indefinite suspension until the end of the season. Could it have been worse? Expulsion from the school?
Yeah, it could have been worse because Amores is still a student of JRU. And one of the things the worst thing a school can do to a student in terms of disciplinary sanctions is an expulsion. So an indefinite suspension is like 2 notches below an expulsion. So it could have been worse for Amores. Thankfully for him, it's just an indefinite suspension. Whether it will be increased to an expulsion or decreased in the future, we just have to wait and see about that.
Let's take it one step further, Attorney. College of St. Benilde players badly hurt by the violence of John Amores. Do you think the school, parents, and the players will take legal action against Amores? And should they, if you were a legal counsel for them?
If I were the legal counsel, of course, it's up to them if they want to file legal charges. But I would tell them that they do have legal grounds to do so. What he did on the court was an intentional tort, which means that he damaged someone intentionally. And you can file a civil case for this for monetary damages, get actual damages like the hospital bills that they had to pay, get exemplary damages because what he did was very reckless and very malevolent. And they can also get moral damages for emotional suffering that their kids suffered because of the rampage done by Amores.
Did Amores did Amores attorney actually commit a crime during the game?
Yes, he did commit a crime. Well, as what we saw here, he punched players and they got injured. So the crime that he committed here was either slight physical injuries or less serious physical injuries or even serious physical injuries, depending on the injuries sustained by the players of the Benilde basketball team. So there was a crime committed.
Could this land him in jail?
Yes, it could land him in jail if he's convicted. So if he's convicted of less serious physical injuries, that will land him, I think, up to 6 months in prison. And if it's slight physical injuries, up to 30 days in prison.
But is it a bailable offense?
Of course, yeah, it's bailable. It's bailable. So it's a bailable offense all the way until his final conviction, depending on how far he appeals.
One lawmaker, attorney, even said that Amores should have been arrested by the San Juan City Police immediately after attacking 3 players. Should that have been an option?
Well, it is an option under the exceptions to like warrantless arrests are allowed if a crime is being committed in front of a peace officer or even a private person, and this is what happened here. Or a warrantless arrest can also happen if a crime has just been committed and the public officer or the peace officer has personal knowledge or probable cause that a crime did happen, and that's exactly what we saw. We saw the crime happening in front of our very eyes, and if there were any policemen or even private people, they could have arrested John Amores then and there, and it would be a legal arrest under the rules of court and under the Constitution.
And when you see different sports columns and even your column, there are different angles to this act that John Amores did, especially not only to basketball but to sports. What would make the players change their minds and back down and not even pursue any type of charges, attorney?
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is some show of remorse from John Amores. Like you mentioned, there hasn't been any public apologies. Like, how can you back down when the other person hasn't really asked for forgiveness? I mean, we're taught to forgive even if no one apologizes, but this is a bit exaggerated what he did. So it will really help if he comes out with a statement and apologizes first, and then maybe we can discuss the players backing down from legal charges against them.
The investigation has even gone beyond the hard court, attorney. They're also seeking what do you call this? Talks with some of the spectators. How liable are the spectators who cajoled him and put him in a spot when he attacked the College of St. Benil players?
Well, spectators heckling, that's part of the game. If ever they crossed any boundaries or crossed any legal thresholds, it would have to be dealt with by the stadium owners, because normally when you enter a stadium, you have a contract with the stadium when it comes to the ticket, and sometimes that ticket says that you can't cajole or harass the players too much. But of course, I think that's secondary. What we have to focus on here is the actions of John Amores. If the hecklers did heckle too much, and maybe we can talk about that, but let's focus on what the real issue here first is: the violence conducted inside the court.
What could Amores' actions mean for violence in sports in the country?
Well, I hope it's a wake-up call that these things still happen, right? And I hope it's a wake-up call also for the sports authorities to really stamp down on these acts of violence. But when I mean by stamping down, again, it's giving proper sanctions, but also having the players show remorse, having the players do what they can to actually improve themselves as players and as people. And doing this is and we have to show that there are real goalposts that they have to do and real things that they have to accomplish before they get back on court.
Thank you so much for sharing with us your legal viewpoint on this case. Sports lawyer, Attorney Mickey Ingles.